Over here.
A couple of questions for Mr. Ricks, sorry. Again, have you set any kind of a time limit, or do you even see any sort of end to this if we continue to have meetings where there appears to be some frustration on the part of the lawyers? How much longer is this going to go on?
Right. Question, is there a time limit? Mr. DeGuerin has indicated he doesn't want it to go on forever. He has his own law practice, and this is not going to be his only case that he will have. If he reaches a point where he believes it's not fruitful to continue, he says that he is going to back out. It's hard for one to represent a client who does not follow the advice of his counsel. So at some point, he's going to reach a level of frustration where, if they do not follow his advice, and my understanding, which he said in the paper, is his advice is that they should come out. So if they continue not to follow that advice, at some point he's saying, then there's no point in me representing these people because they're not following the advice that I'm giving them.
Yeah, I have a follow-up also. We're coming up on another Sabbath, and traditionally, for the last month anyway, they haven't talked to you guys on the Sabbath. Do you expect that there is going to be some sort of a halt to the discussions with a lawyer on the weekend?
Question is, what will the future hold with regard to the Sabbath and discussions with the lawyers? I can't really predict what is going to occur there.
It's still just hourly?
It's really hourly, and we've said that the discussions with their counsel will continue on a meeting-by-meeting basis. We've given no guarantees that they will have continual access. If they reach that same point of frustration that we did where nothing positive is accomplished, I'm sure they would also agree, what is the point of continuing this? So we're still, I don't want to continually put it down. My feeling is that there is a time agenda that they have. They want it to be in sync with their religious teachings, in that it would be in fulfillment of certain prophecies that David has made previously. What that is, I don't have a crystal ball. Yes, over here.
Well, yesterday, Mr. DeGuerin said it could be next week, and you a little while ago mentioned that Passover was coming into the equation. Do you now see Passover as a real strong possibility as D-Day?
Do I see Passover as a key day? The reason I do that is not because Mr. DeGuerin has said it, but I have, of course, paid close attention to what he said to the media. He said it was next week. Mr. Koresh has repeatedly talked about the new moon that took place here a week or so ago. And their way of computing what Passover is they compute it 15 days after the new moon. Their calendar is not necessarily in sync with the traditional Jewish calendar, and that their Passover would begin sundown, I believe it's not. Passover would begin on sundown the 6th and end at sundown on the 7th. So we've had this reference by many of the followers who've left. Mr. Koresh himself has said that Passover is a key time. They do not celebrate traditional Christmas holidays. They celebrate traditionally the holidays of the Old Testament. So I think, yes, it is a key date. What does that mean? Does it mean it's time for resolution, or is it time for armed confrontation? I'm hoping it means it's time for resolution. It's time for him to lead his people out, like what occurred at Passover, and lead his people to the Promised Land on to a new beginning.
Between now and then, it ain't going to happen.
We would love for it to happen between now and then, but what I'm getting is the frustration that is being exhibited by Mr. DeGuerin in his own statements that he believes it probably will occur next week. We would love for it to happen at noontime or beforehand, if they can talk them out. The best part about David Koresh is that he is very flexible with regard to certain biblical events and time schedules. So he could interpret Passover as beginning right now. I think he wouldn't have any trouble doing that if it would fit his needs. Yes.
I'd like to ask you what you know specifically about Mr. Koresh's health, and then I'd like to throw another ball to Mr. Troy.
Question is, how do we interpret his health? We ask, as part of the video, we sent in a battery pack so they could fire up their video camera. We asked for pictures of the children. We also asked for pictures of his injuries so we could have our doctors examine those and try to make some type of a prediction as to how that stood. It's hard for us to say. When we were last talking with him, Mr. Koresh, oftentimes he would express much pain and agony. As he got rolling, though, into his conversations, he seemed to develop strength. I have no doubt that a person who's been shot twice and has really not been treated by a medical doctor is undergoing great pain. I suspect he did recover quite rapidly. He indicated he was up and walking around. We described it as miraculous because that's pretty much was. He was up and around almost 1 week after he was wounded. I suspect he got up too quickly and had somewhat of a relapse. He did not let the injuries heal as they should have. So I think he's undergoing a lot of pain.
Hey, my follow-up.
Yes.
Is for the ATF, were flash grenades used on the initial attack, and if so, specifically when?
The question, were flash grenades used on the initial raid? They're actually referred to as flash bangs. They're not grenades. They're concussion devices that are distraction devices. They cause obviously a flash of light, very brilliant, which constricts the pupils, and a concussion which causes a momentary disorientation on the part of the person who they're directed at. And yes, they were used when we made entry into the upstairs room, which was believed to be the arms cache. They were thrown in as a distraction device before our agents entered that particular room. It's a very common tactic in a dynamic entry.
And just follow, where was that as far as when shots had been fired? Had shots already been fired, or did shots come after the flash grenade was used?
No, shots were fired as soon as the agents began unloading out of the trailers. And of course, it took about 30 seconds for our team to get around the side of the building, up the ladders onto the roof, before the flashbang was utilized. Back in the back.
Yeah, I hate to knock you out again, but this one is for Mr. Ricks. In talking with Mr. DeGuerin, are you getting any indication that perhaps his talks reflect the same pattern that your federal negotiators have with Mr. Koresh? Is he being cooperative? Is he setting up hurdles? And then once those problems are solved, creating other problems?
The question is, do we believe that Mr. DeGuerin's talks with Mr. Koresh are following the same pattern as ours? Again, it's difficult for me to assess that. I can infer some of that, and I indicated that yesterday. As he went in, and we've heard a lot of people, boy, if I only had a chance just to talk to these people logically, I'm sure I could talk them right out. And we've been on this thing for 33 days, so we've gone through this process. So people coming in new think that all they got to do is say the right magic word and they'll come marching out. I think Mr. DeGuerin believed that was the case based on what they gave him, which he's indicated was, yes, they do want to surrender. They do want to come out. They do want to tell their side of the story. So the logical thing is, come out. That would seem to make sense. But then all of a sudden, the hurdles get in the way. They need this taken care of, that taken care of. I do not know what type of hurdles are placed there. Some of the questions that come back to us are mechanical questions that we've tried to answer, such as where would people be housed? Could people stay together? Things like that. What types of charges do we anticipate are going to be filed? We go through only mechanical type questions that they bring out to us. So just based on those, it appears that certain legal questions are being asked of him to resolve with us, but we do not know the full context of other discussions.